Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Belgium once again, and we're going to continue on with this little Trappist mini-series that I've been doing for you. So this is review number 3 of 7, but today we have the brewery whose beer is most difficult to come across out of all of them. So for this one we're going to go to Brouwerij Abdij Saint-Sixtus, who of course brew the Westvleteren beers. I have reviewed the Westvleteren 12 for you before. I've not managed to do the 8, that's one I need to get to in the future, but I was very lucky, and in Copenhagen I managed to come across a bottle of their Blond. So since 1945 or 1946 these guys have not actually sold their beers with a label, so the distinctive feature of these Westvleteren beers is actually the bottle cap. So on the bottle cap here it tells you it's a 5.8% blonde beer, and it should be really nice. It was rated 99 overall on Rate Beer, and these guys I think are actually the smallest of all the Trappist breweries, even out of the newer ones if I'm not mistaken. But certainly out of the 7 older ones anyway, these guys are the smallest of all the Trappist breweries. But I'm definitely looking forward to this one. This is the blonde beer. As I said, with this Trappist series, I wanted to try and cover all the different styles that you could get, and all 7 of the kind of old original Trappist breweries. So I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer, and if you do get the chance, I recommend you get a hold of some of these Westvleteren beers, but they can be very difficult to come across. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and the Abbey since it's a Trappist beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brouwerij Abdij Saint-Sixtus before. No doubt I will add the review of the 8 at some point in the future, I just don't know when. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there, of course, for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's constantly being added to. And please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys, and the support that you give the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Abdij Saint-Sixtus then. So as I mentioned to you, the Westvleteren brewery is part of the Saint-Sixtus Abbey in Westvleteren in West Flanders in the southwestern part of Belgium, and it's actually very close to the city of Ypres, which is very famous because of all the stuff that went on there during the First World War. It's a really pretty city actually, with quite a sad history, but this abbey, as many of the Trappist ones do, belongs to the Cistercian order of strict observance. So the earliest traces of a monastic presence on this site actually date back to the year 1260, although it is thought that the Abbey of Saint-Omer was in the same area, and this one dated from the year 806. So during the period from 1260 to 1355, a community of nuns lived on the site at the Katzberg before the site was later abandoned, but then between 1610 and 1784 a monastery of Brigittines was located on what is called the Father's Corner. So in 1831 the hermit Jan Baptiste Victor was joined by a prior and a few monks in the woods of Saint-Sixtus, and this group was what later developed into the Trappist Abbey of Saint-Sixtus. So in 1838 the Westvleteren brewery was founded inside the Abbey precinct, and in 1839 a primary school was established, and then the following year in 1840 the old church of the priory was built. In 1871 the priory was granted the status of abbey by Pope Pius IX, and between 1875 and 1878 a model farm was developed as an example for the region. So during the First World War the abbey provided shelter to many refugees and allied soldiers. I think it said there was somewhere around 40,000 or 400,000, I forget which factory 10 it was, but there was quite a lot of soldiers living in and around the abbey area. But they managed to retain their copper vessels in both the First and Second World Wars. I think actually this brewery was the only one that during the Second World War managed to retain its copper vessels, but the Second World War proved to be very, very difficult for them, and they actually only first sold their beer commercially in 1931 because they were producing only on a very, very small scale. But in 1945 the abbot took the decision to reduce the capacity of the brewery to just 4,800 hectolitres per year, and I think it's stayed pretty close to that ever since. But since that year they've also sold their beers without labels on the bottles, and they added a new guest house in 1964, and the new abbey church was completed in the year 1968. But from 1946 to 1992 the St. Bernardus brewery in Watau were actually granted a license to brew beers under the Saint-Sixtus name, but when this agreement expired the abbey opened their new brewery, and St. Bernardus continued to brew beers of similar styles but just under a different label. And that of course is why you get the St. Bernardus beers having all the monks, the kind of monk artwork and things on them. They're actually really, really quite nice beers, and I need to review some more of those as well. But Saint-Sixtus are the only Trappist brewery where the monks are still fully responsible for the beer brewing. I think it said they had somewhere along the lines of 3 different workers, or 3 secular workers that came in and helped with certain aspects of the brewing process, but it's 5 monks that are responsible for the actual brewing of the beer, and then another 5 also help out when it comes to bottling it as well. So this is the only Trappist brewery where the monks are basically fully in control of the brewing process. And it's quite interesting when you go through each of these breweries, because you do learn that each of the 7 original Trappist breweries, or the 7 older ones I should say, have their little quirks to them and things like that. So it is really quite cool. It was actually a group of monks, I think, and was it 1590 or something like that, that went from the Westvleteren Abbey to found the Chimay brewery as well. So they're all kind of interlinked. The history of all of these 7 Trappist breweries is quite interlinked, so it's really quite interesting. And if you do get the chance to try some of these Trappist beers, I highly recommend that you do. But the 3 beers you're going to find from these guys are this one here, which is the Blond, the Westvleteren 8, and then the Westvleteren 12. The Westvleteren 12 actually is a very, very hyped beer, and a lot of people believe that to be the best beer in the world. But I've tried it and it is really, really nice. I'm not sure if I would quite say it's the best beer in the world, but it is really pretty damn good. It's a lovely quadruple beer. But that's all you need to know about the beer, the brewery and the Abbey just now. Let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the bottle again. There you can see one of the distinctive features of these Trappist beers, of course, or some of them, is that they have this particular bottle cap around here. The Westmalle Brewery also use these, but like I said, since 1945 or 1946, these guys have not had labels on their beer, so the distinctive feature of the Westvleteren beers is actually their bottle cap. So yeah, really quite nicely presented bottle cap, I have to say. It's one of the weirder things I've said on the channel, of course. But yeah, as I mentioned to you, it's a 5.8% blonde beer, and it was rated 99 overall on Rate Beer. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on to the tasting then. I'm really looking forward to this. Yeah, nice, slightly smoky opening there, and we'll get it out and into the glass. The one thing you always, as I say all the time when it comes to Belgian beer, you always have to be very, very careful when you open these up and when you pour them, because they do bottle ferment. So some of them do like to explode on you, and you can often get big heads on top of the beer. But this looks really, really quite nice. There's quite a bit of sediment actually visible coming out of this one, but it looks really, really quite nice. So yeah, let's have a little look at the colour of this one then. So as you can see, there is actually quite a bit of sediment floating around in that. I'm not sure how well you can see that on the camera, but when I bring this one back towards myself, it's a nice, quite orangey colour. It's got a nice bright yellow on the edge, and then it's a richer orange as you go into the middle. There's quite a wee bit of sediment just floating around on this one. That of course is all the yeast. I should maybe kind of keep some of the yeast and see if I can use it for home brewing or something like that. I don't know, that could be an interesting experiment. But as you can see, there's a half finger or a 3/4 finger of a frothy white head on this one. Some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I think it's fair to say that's a really quite nice looking beer. That's one of the things you always get with these Belgian beers, is you do get a good little bit of sediment out of them. But it looks very, very nice. Kind of particularly exactly what you would expect in terms of the colour of a blonde beer. But let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, that smells really nice. I mean, the distinctive feature, as I've always told you with Belgian beer, is that lovely big doughy bready yeasting. Belgian beer for me is all about that lovely yeast character that the beer has. So with this one you've got a lovely big white bready character coming out of it. You can smell that slightly kind of fluffier doughy yeast coming out of the beer as well. There's a wee bit of a kind of coriander or clovey spice coming out of this one. You can get a little bit of a kind of banana note to the beer as well, but that's quite mild. There's a wee bit of a slightly biscuity note. I think there's a wee bit of a biscuity malty character coming out of this one, just a little bit of that kind of biscuity sweetness in the beer, but it smells lovely. This beer, actually, I should point out that this is the one that the monks brew usually for their own consumption, and that's why this one's a little bit harder to get, because I think it's just they do drink most of it themselves. The 8 and the 12, of course, are the ones I think that are more sought after when it comes to actually buying the beer, but this one's just a little bit more difficult to get. But it smells lovely. As I always say, just take a little bit of time and mull over the aroma of the beer before you actually get stuck into it, especially when it's a beer that's as special as this. But when you sugar this beer up, you start to get a kind of almost butterscotchy kind of biscuit note out of the beer, which is really interesting. There's a wee bit of a grassy kind of floral hop coming out of this one. I do suspect that they probably use German hops, or maybe a little bit of English hops in this beer actually. but it smells lovely. And you can just get a little bit of that kind of slightly lemongrassy citrus character coming out of it too. But it smells amazing. So a Belgian blonde beer is another one that I really quite like. As I've told you before, my favourite styles when it comes to Belgian beer are the triple and the quadruple, but the blonde beer is really nice as well. It's a good kind of lighter session beer, of course, and most Belgian beer does tend to be a little bit heavier in alcohol than the likes of the German or the English ones, but this should be really nice. So without further ado then, let's get stuck into this beer. So this one is the blonde beer from Brouwerij Abdij Saint-Sixtus, the Westvleteren blonde, the one that the monks like to drink themselves. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Santé, Proust. That's really nice. It leans towards the bready and yeasty side of things, this one. It's a really good, straight up, sessionable blonde beer. And it's very distinctive as well. I mean, when it comes to the Belgian blonde beers, I can't say that I've had any other ones that really quite taste like this one. It must be their own yeast strains and things like that. The yeast can have such an impact on the flavour of the beer, and I guess they've maybe got a maltery or something like that. They might have their own maltery or malt house actually in the abbey themselves, but it just tastes so distinctive. The thing you're going to notice when you try this beer is just how smooth the malt base and how nicely smooth those kind of yeasty characters in the beer are. And this isn't a beer you're going to come across too often, as I said. So if you get the chance to try this, make sure you savour it. But in terms of a blonde beer, this one is really quite nice. It doesn't quite have the same kind of boozy bite that a lot of the Belgian beers can have. It is just really quite smooth. But it's really nicely done. I mean, compared to the Westvleteren 12, it has nowhere near the same complexity as that, but it's a completely different style, of course. But it is nice just to have something that's a little bit of a change of pace from a brewery that you know to expect good things from. But that's really nice. So yeah. With this one then, you can feel that little bit of pale malty character just blanket in the middle of your tongue. On top of that, you start to get a nice, slightly thicker, bready character, and there's a good bit of that doughy, bready yeast character as well. It's just, the whole beer just goes together. All the flavours kind of bridge themselves together really quite nicely. Right in the middle of the palate, you can get a little bit of that biscuity sweetness, and you can pick up just a little bit of that slightly boozy, kind of banana-ish note, that sort of banana clovey note that you expect of these Belgian yeasts. But that's really nice. Make sure you try this if you get the chance. It's quite rare to come across this beer, but really have a go at it if you get the chance. It's definitely worth it, I would say. But yeah, it just goes together really quite well. You just, in the aftertaste, you do get a little hint of that kind of slightly, almost astringent, kind of strong, boozy, yeasty character that you expect of the Belgian beers, like, you know, the big ones like Duvel and things like this. It just has a little tiny bit of that in the middle of the palate. So it does, in a way, it comes across as very different from a lot of the Belgian beers that you're going to have, but it just has that little thing at the end that reminds you, no, I'm a Belgian beer, which is really quite cool. It's a nice little quirk to the beer. But yeah, that's pretty nice. In the back corner of the palate, you've got a little bit of an earthy character there. It's just very minimal. But overall, the hoppy side of the beer is actually quite floral. There's a nice, just slightly sharp floral bitterness to this one. It's nowhere near as heavy in IBUs as like an IPAs or something like this. It's just got a nice little bit of bitter character along the edges of the palate. As you go round the front curve of the tongue, you get that little lighter kind of grassy part, and it's just a little bit lemongrassy as well. This beer just blends together really quite well, and the flavours for me are quite unique in this one. It must just be their own yeast strain or something like that they're using. But that's really damn good. Like I said, if you get the chance to try this beer, have a go at it. It's not got the same complexity, anywhere near the same complexity as like a triple or a quadruple or something like this, but in terms of a sessionable beer, it really is pretty damn good. That's a damn good beer. I'm finding that as my mouth adjusts to it a little bit more, I just get a little bit more of that kind of floral bitterness to it. But it's really well done. In terms of the fruity side of the beer, it just has, if you always go behind the front curve of the tongue, you'll just get that little oily bubble where all these nice kind of juicy fruity esters come out. And for me, this one's just got a little bit of that kind of typical slightly lemony sort of sherbety note that you expect to these kind of both the Tripel and the Belgian blonde beers and the saisons and stuff like this. These kind of golden colour beers of Belgium, it does have that typical just nice slight sharp astringent lemony character. But this whole beer, this one's all about how the flavours blend together. It's not punchy in any one regard, but then again, a lot of the Belgian beers, it's all about the complexity with them and the malt base and the yeast and things like that and how that goes together, and this one certainly is no exception to that rule. But in terms of Trappist beers, this is one of the more kind of sessionable ones I think that you're going to come across, and it is really well done. It is very rare, so if you get the chance to try it, I recommend that you do it. If you're a fan of kind of big bready beers with just a little bit of a kind of biscuity sweetness and some floral hop, then those are the main flavours you're going to pick out of this, and if you like those, then you certainly will enjoy this. I'm really glad I got to try this. This is because this is the one that the monks like to drink themselves. In terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I would say it's probably mid-bodied, this one. It has a little bit of an oily character to it. The carbonation is a little bit lively, and that tends to be a trend I think with these Trappist beers. Yeah, the carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle to it, not as much as some of the other ones that I've tried in the series, but it does just have a little bit of liveliness to it. Again, that's a typical feature of Belgian beer just because they are bottle conditioned. The malt base has a little bit of sweetness. As I said, the yeasty characters that this one has gives the middle of the palate a very, very smooth mouthfeel, but you do start to get a little bit of sweetness out of it later on. It does have a little bit of that kind of slightly boozy, citricy sharpness that you get from Belgian beers, and there's a wee bit of hoppy bitterness in there too, and just a little bit of juicy character from that almost lemongrassy note you get on the front curve of the tongue too. But like I said, overall, in terms of the Trappist beers, this one's not as complex as the other ones you're going to come across, but it's a damn good session beer. I can see why it's as highly rated as it is, because it is really really quite quirky beer. I've not come across a Belgian blonde beer that is quite as smooth as this one, and I do like that little bit of hoppy bitterness that it has as well. But yeah, there's not much more you can say about this beer other than it's a really damn good session beer, and it just reminds you at the end that yes, I am a Belgian beer, and that's what I like about this one. So yeah, it's been really cool to be able to review this one for you. One of the rarer beers that you're going to find from Belgium as far as I'm aware. But a really interesting one to actually be able to review for you here on the channel. So I hope you've enjoyed my take on this beer. As always, thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Do let me know your own thoughts on this beer if you have tried it yourself. Let me know what your favourite beers are out of the Westvleteren range. Of course, I still need to review the 8 for you, so hopefully I can get that at some point in the near future. But thank you once again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was the Westvleteren Blond from Brouwerij Abdij, Saint-Sixtus near Ypres in the southwestern part of Belgium in Flanders. So thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. It was really awesome to be able to review this beer for you, and you will see another Trappist beer review tomorrow. Santé, Proust.